Hello and welcome to Ordinary Lives. I'm Jane.
And I'm Chris. And tonight we're joined by friends from all over Europe as we continue our conversation about how we can use our ordinary lives as part of God's extraordinary plan.
Thanks so much for joining us this evening. We'd love to know where you're joining from, so do comment in the live chat and let us know where you are.
Absolutely. Tonight we are going to continue our conversation about those that have discovered ways to use their profession for God. And tonight we're going to go a bit further afield, not just those that are doing it in the UK as part of their everyday lives, but those that have chosen to take them abroad to use their gifts. So anybody that has seen that opportunity. So Jane, have you ever done that yourself?
Spent a few years in Uganda and we moved because my husband's profession in engineering, so he used that to serve with a Christian mission organisation there, and I used my youth work background to do things. How about you, Chris?
That's great. Well, if you can call moving from Scotland to England moving abroad, then I suppose yes. But maybe you guys have had better experiences than myself. Maybe you've gone a bit further afield. Love to hear your stories and thoughts about where you've been before, where you'd love to go. So feel free to add that into some of the comment boxes in the screen.
Yeah, so tonight we've got an interview with Ali James, who is Director of Global Recruiting at Mercy Ships. And we're also going to be chatting to Alicia and Jenna, who both currently use their professions to serve God overseas.
Brilliant. Yeah, thanks for joining us, guys. Hi, Alicia. Hi, Jenna. Lovely to have you join us. Why don't you introduce yourselves? Tell us where you are, what you're doing.
Hi, yeah, I'm Alicia, and I come from Dorset in the UK, but I live in Norway now, and I'm doing finance.
Hi, I'm Jenna. I'm from Aberdeen in Scotland, but I currently live just outside Barcelona in Spain, and I work in human resources.
Great, it's fab to have you guys with us this evening. We're going to be chatting to Alicia and Jenna some more later and asking them some questions. So we'd love to hear your questions as well. If there's anything you'd like to ask them about the realities of using your training overseas to serve God, what that looks like, then please pop your questions on Slido. So the details for that are on the screen now, and we'll leave that up for a bit so you can use that. Very simple to do, and your questions will be anonymous. You can also like other people's questions as well if there's something up there that you agree with and would like to hear answered by these ladies.
Brilliant. Well, in the meantime, we have taken to the virtual streets to hear some of our other friends and colleagues that have gone abroad. Let's hear from them now.
Hi everyone, my name is Matt and I'm a chartered engineer within the mechanical engineering industry. Right now I'm serving on board the Logos Hope as one of the engineering managers.
Hi, my name is Emily and I'm an early years teacher.
Worthwhile, exciting and obedient.
Life-changing, challenging and exciting.
Honestly, I didn't initially, I didn't even know that there were opportunities abroad where I could use my profession. I didn't know that the need was there. It was actually someone who was already on the mission field who made that need aware to me. And I guess for me, it was a process to realise that it was something which the Lord had put in place for me, something which He had planned for me to do in advance, good works in advance for me to do. And actually, why not? Why not me? Why shouldn't it be me who uses my profession in a way that serves God overseas? That was kind of the main driving factor, and then the Lord opened the doors every step along the way, and now here I am.
I could see that God had given me skills in being a teacher, giftings in that, and I really wanted to use it wherever He led me, and He led me abroad. I was a teacher for a year on the OM ships, and it was just a joy to serve God in that way and to serve the community on board and to use the profession that God had given me in the form of missions.
Well, honestly, when I read from Romans 12, I'm reminded of how we are called as Christians to give everything that we have to follow Christ. For some of us, that might mean staying at home and being involved in our jobs and being involved in the lives of non-Christians there. But for some others of us, that might mean going overseas. And just the way that the Lord has placed everything in order and made the way for me to be here and serve Him in this way. That was, for me, what it looks like to serve wholeheartedly and give everything that I have for Him.
Great. We're going to move on to an interview with Ali in a moment. Just to prompt you again, if you have got any questions for Alicia and Jenna, do add them to Slido, details at the bottom, or if it's easier, pop them in the live chat as well. That's absolutely fine. So a couple of days ago, I had a really good chat with Ali at Mercy Ships. For anyone who doesn't know who Mercy Ships are, they are different from the OM ships. We get a bit confused sometimes. But yeah, Mercy Ships is a Christian international development organization, and they deploy hospital ships to some of the poorest countries around the world to provide essential and vital healthcare while sharing God's love. Ali is Director of Global Recruiting for Mercy Ships. And here are some of the thoughts he had on why it's so important and so significant to use your training to serve God.
I don't know about you, but whenever I think of someone who serves God in mission, I automatically think of like the Bible school trained, skilled evangelist, which can be a little bit off-putting if you don't feel like you have those kind of skills or gifts. I'm wondering what's your experience of how God can use anyone with any skill in building His kingdom?
It's a really interesting and great question, because it's something I think people are discovering every single day all around the world, is how can my skills make a difference to somebody, whether that be in local mission, national mission, or international mission. As you were asking me the question, a story popped into my head of a guy I spoke to a few years ago who had seen a lot of what we do and a lot of videos of what we do. Him and his wife both retired. His wife is a retired nurse. And so she's always felt like she has had a ministry in healthcare and in caring for people. So this guy came up to me at a conference after hearing everything, and he said, I really want you to be really honest with me. I want to help and I want to do something, but I just don't know how. My wife's a retired nurse and she can help in those kind of settings. But me, I just don't know what I would do. And I said, well, what did you do for your life? What is your skill? And he said, I'm just a baker. And I almost welled up, because I was preparing to go back to the ship, and someone had emailed me a few days before saying, we're looking great on staffing of volunteers, but we are really concerned that we don't have a baker. And so we have a bakery on the ship, and that's how we provide all the bread and for the food. And they do more than that even. And so I almost welled up, and I said to him, I just had an email, we really need a baker. And we had this amazing one. We both cried and prayed together. But he was like, I've been looking for an opportunity to use the skills that God has given me in baking and the passion that He's given me for that, for His kingdom. But never felt like that was something God could use. And so that was an amazing moment of discovery for him. And I think a lot of people discover that in similar ways. We take the classic picture of an iceberg, where the tip of the iceberg is popping out of the water, but below the surface, you see this huge iceberg, and there's so much more to it than just what is peeking out the top. And I often reflect that our surgical specialties or surgical procedures and the training we provide is often what you see popping out the surface of the water, but underneath is everything else that enables that to happen. So we constantly focus on, on one of our ships, only half of the positions are in the hospital for the whole ship. Everything else is either getting the engines and the generators to keep going, to keep the lights on, which means if our chaplaincy team are praying with a patient, they're not doing that in the dark. There's a galley team that they're cooking for the patients, and bringing those skills that they feel like they have and God has given them to contribute to enable the surgical procedures to happen and enable the training to happen. Now, I've always fit that category. I've always fit the category of somebody who's, I've always felt like my strength and my ministry was with the crew and not necessarily with the patients. Yet my wife's ministry was with the patients and the local nurses that she was training and the relationships that she had ashore. I've always felt like my contribution was to manage my teams well, even to lead worship on board for the crew and to walk with them in those journeys to enable those people to then do their jobs, which may be very front-facing with the patients and the people that we serve. And I honestly don't feel like I contributed any less than my wife in what she did, just in a very different way.
What does it look like to sort of live out love and share God's love in that context?
The mission of bringing hope and healing, the healing part is often quite obvious in that we will provide surgery and someone will then recover from that and be free of their condition. So we often focus very much on the physical healing, but we're very keen on people being healed emotionally from the trauma of carrying their condition for so long, but also spiritually. And in the nations we serve in Africa, often everything is spiritual, and everything people do is spiritual, which is very different to my experience, our experience being in the UK, where everything is secular and you have to look for the spiritual. Everything is spiritual. So, their experience with us is a spiritual journey for them. So the spiritual healing is a big one, but the word hope is where everyone comes in. And just a moment where anybody who helps out of some of our patient selection days, where we'll invite anybody who believes they're a candidate for the types of surgeries we do, they can come, and there's thousands of people there. I could even just be standing in the queue, just doing some security, and even just looking somebody in the eye that hasn't been looked in the eye for years, it starts to breathe some of that emotional healing and that hope. So that whole journey with us is a very spiritual journey for the patients, which opens up opportunities for us to be able to share about why we do what we do. And it's often the patients and even the caregivers that come with them that see what we do and see that we were being truthful when we said that we can do this surgery, we're going to do it for free, and we're going to take care of you. Everything is free. Your food, your medication, everything is free. Everyone's suspicious of anything that's free. So when they come on board and they not only see that it's free, but their experience with our health professionals is very different to the experience they may have had with their local health professionals, where we really show them love ultimately. And it's that, and it's love God showed us first how to do. So our nursing staff really, just by being who they are and being there to bring God's love to the patients and their caregivers, is what sparks some of those conversations and those questions about how are these people so happy and what they're doing? Why are these people so happy all the time? Who is this God that they're serving? Why can their God heal me from this condition when I've been praying to my God for 20 years and they've done nothing? And so even just by being who we are sends a huge message to our patients and our caregivers. If you're someone of a different faith, of a Muslim faith, for example, and you don't want to talk to anybody, that's fine. We're still gonna offer you the surgery. That's not a condition of receiving surgery from us. But there's just conversations happening all the time. But the crew have an opportunity to get involved with befriending patients and spending time with patients in the wards going ashore to spend time in local orphanages or prisons, if we have those relationships established in each country. But ultimately for us, it's about just bringing that hope and that love of God into that nation, and by our very nature, by our very behavior, by our very ministry, showing people how much God loves them, how much we believe that despite this big facial tumor, they're still made in the image of God, like we were, which just changes the atmosphere completely. So there's definitely opportunities that arise. It's for someone who's maybe less comfortable with those kind of situations, then everyone knows they're still making a contribution to that being able to happen by what they're doing on board. So it's just the things that happen organically on board and naturally with the patients is beautiful, and seeing them discover Jesus and discover the love of God, and even be taught by our hospital chaplaincy team stories of Jesus while they're with us is such a beautiful thing to watch happen.
Ali, I hope this rings a bell for you, but we've spoken before, and you gave an example of I think it was a gentleman with a Muslim background.
Yeah, I mean, I remember there being somebody who came to our team and was very nervous about how this was going to go. Me coming to see the Christians about this condition that I've been told is impossible to treat, unless they have millions of dollars. And so just being able to just kind of sit down, and we work with local translators, and so a lot of the communication done with this gentleman was through translators. But he generally came with, I don't really want to talk to anybody. I don't want the Christians to try and convert me. I just need to be healed from my condition and then get on with my life. And he needed the surgery. He needed from what I remember, it was a life-threatening condition that he had. So the team worked and established the rules is that you don't have to talk to us, but if the nurse asks you a question that's relevant to your treatment, then you've got to answer. So they had an understanding. From what I remember, just the experience that gentleman had on board, we just saw barriers break down and walls break down the whole time, as the environment on board is so infectious that you can't help but just be swept up with the joy of the place. And this, we just saw this happen with this one gentleman who was in the wards, and I think his bed was by the wall, so he kind of slept, facing the wall and not going to talk to anybody, but then would get curious about things that were happening, and why people are singing in the corridors and things. Music wasn't a big part of his culture, so what is this joy? And we just started to see him completely transform within himself, start to see him smile, talk to the nurses and the doctors, thank them for what they were doing. And just that when the guy that came on board was somebody who was so scared and so frightened of what might happen to him on board, not just whether the surgery would go well, but what would happen to him in his faith. And he still probably left the ship as a Muslim, but with a whole different viewpoint on what joy can look like and where that joy can come from, and having that experience with the Christians. For us, that's a beautiful example of somebody who could have asked a lot of questions, but really just needed to experience the love of God and come and do that on board the ship, as well as receive surgery that he really needed.
Ali, thanks so much. I find that really inspiring to just hear some great examples and concrete stories of what it's like to, live out your life, your faith, your experience. your love for God and your love for people and your love for your profession all in the same place and in the same experience. So thank you so much for sharing with us.
Thank you, Ali. What a wonderful ministry you guys have at Mercy Ships. And it's great to hear just of the opportunities that you have to go abroad with your gifts. So again, let's hear if you guys have any thing to share, maybe about your experiences. Do you add them in? We're about to switch back over to the live conversation now with Alicia and Jenna. So if you do have questions, do fire them onto Slido. The number is there. And yeah, let's bring them back on.
Great. Hello, ladies. Maybe, Jenna, we could just kick off by hearing from you a little bit about why you decided to go to Spain in the first place, taking your skills and your training with you.
Sure. Well, it's a fairly long story, but I'll give you the summarized version. So since I was quite young, I've had a desire to serve God in overseas missions, since someone gave me a book by the missionary Isabel Kuhn, who went with her husband to China. And then I started my overseas missionary experience by doing a gap year between finishing secondary school and going to university. And that was with Operation Mobilization on one of their ships called Lagos 2. And that's also where I started learning Spanish, because we were mainly in Latin America with the ship. I'd always had a love of languages, and so I chose to study French and Spanish at university at Edinburgh in Scotland. And when I was coming to the end of my degree, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with my languages. I knew I didn't want to teach, but I didn't really know what else to do. Somebody suggested that I look into human resources, and I did some voluntary work experience in HR and thought, yeah, this is actually pretty interesting. So I did a postgrad qualification in human resource management, and then started working straight away for the local council in Aberdeen, which is where I'm from, in human resources. And I did that job for 10 years. And I loved my job. It was really interesting and varied, and I had great colleagues. But I always knew that I would go abroad again at some point to serve God. And that's what I did just over 2 years ago now. And why Spain? It combines three of my favorite things, which are speaking Spanish, meeting new people, and speaking to people about Jesus.
That's wonderful. And just to move on now to Alicia, bring you into the conversation. So could you maybe share us a little bit about how you saw God's hand at work for how you could take your professional skills in accountancy to Norway?
Yeah, of course. So my husband was working with a Norwegian company as part of his PhD. And once, at the end of his PhD, they offered him a job, which was great. And so for a year, he was working from home, traveling back and forth to Norway about once a month, something like that. And so we were really praying about, whether it was right for us to move out here to Norway. And I was finishing my accounting training, 3 years of accounting training. And prior to that, I had worked for UCCF, which is the Student Ministries, in a fundraising role, which I really enjoyed. And so my kind of ideal job would be to go back into sort of Christian mission, but on the finance side of things after having done my accounting training. And a big part of the decision of whether or not we would move to Norway would be, would I be able to get a job out here as well? And I'd heard of OM from when I was quite young through our church, and I just thought, well, they're all over the world. Let's see what they have going on in Norway. And when I searched online, pretty much the first job advert that I saw from OM Norway was they were looking for an accountant to join their team, which was great. I think the advert went something like, do you love Jesus and do you love numbers? And we need you. And I thought, well, that's perfect. That's exactly fitting with my skills and my passions. But I kind of thought, I figured that they might be in Oslo. I thought, the headquarters of OM probably going to be in the capital, which is not where my husband's job was. But then when I scrolled further down the page, I found out that actually the office here in Norway is based in Kristiansand, which is exactly the same city where my husband's company is based, and that was just so exciting, and definitely God just opening up that door for us to come here and providing this job for me where I could use my skills. It was great.
Yeah, made me smile when you said about finding opportunity, something that combines your love for Jesus and your love for numbers, and just those chances to combine your loves and your passions. Numbers.
Hello.
So it's individual for each of us. Just want to ask Jenna. So a question coming up on Slido here. How did people react to you choosing to leave your HR job in Scotland? And what would you say to someone who is considering doing the same sort of thing?
So when I told people that I was going to be leaving my job, I got a range of different reactions. Most people, to be fair, were excited about this big adventure that I was going on, moving abroad to Spain. But some people were a bit concerned because I wasn't going to be working in HR for the first 2 years that I was here in Spain. They were concerned about the impact on my career of leaving a full-time permanent job. How would I explain to future employers that I'd had 2 years out of HR? Would I lose my skills? That kind of thing. But for me, whilst my career was important to me and is important to me, following God's will for my life is more important. And I've also really seen, while I've been here in Spain, different skills that I've been able to gain that I wouldn't have obtained if I'd stayed working for the City Council in Aberdeen. So things like a different perspective through working for an international global organisation, communicating in a different language, and also developing further flexibility and cultural awareness through living and working in a different culture. So those are transferable skills that I'll take with me into any role in the future. And so I guess I would say to someone who's considering taking the same step, that leaving any job is not a decision to take lightly. And there's lots of practicalities to take into account around professional registration, your future career development, how it might impact on your workplace or your state pension. But for me personally, the new skills and experience that I have gained whilst being abroad have more than made up for all of those things. And I don't regret my decision at all.
That's great. I mean, that statement of following God's will was more important. Wow, that is such a challenge for us to think about. Alicia, so some people might not see the link between finance and reaching people with the love of Jesus. Could you share a little bit about how those things connect in your ministry?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So, I mean, every organization needs a finance function in order to be effective and to be operating well. And so that includes, charities and not-for-profits and Christian mission organizations as part of that. So, I really see my role as facilitating gospel ministry. So I provide this very practical and important link between the supporters and people who are giving gifts for various projects, and then making sure that that money gets to the correct people, places, projects, etc., who are out there building God's kingdom. It's also really important to ensure that these funds are being used effectively. It's good to be good stewards of the resources that God's given us. And my role in finance enables me to do that by creating reports that people need to make the kind of strategic decisions, and just having that overview, making sure the expenses are all correct and going to the right places. Also, in general, there's like the compliance as well with the local reporting regulations, and being able to be really tight with that is a way that I glorify God, I guess, with my skills, by making sure that everything's kind of there in order. It's really, for me, it's about it's more about that link between the supporters. It's channeling through the finance to get to the projects where it's needed.
So going to just squeeze in one extra question for Jenna, just before we have to wrap up. But Jenna, I know that you split your time between two different roles. Could you tell us a little bit about that and why you decided to do it?
Sure, of course. So just a little bit of the background to that is that when I first came here to Spain to work with Operation Mobilisation, I wasn't doing any HR work at all. Rather, I was doing friendship evangelism, mainly through language exchanges, helping people with their English, getting to know them, and then having opportunities to share my life with them, my testimony, and to speak about Jesus. I was also involved in discipleship groups, which are small groups for people who want to grow together in their faith and in their relationship with Jesus. And I was also doing some communications work, which was new for me, a new skill that I've gained here, doing things like updating our Facebook and Instagram and our webpage. So when I was coming to the end of my first 2 years here, then I was asked to take on the personnel officer role doing HR. But what was important for me is that that role would be on a part-time basis so that I could continue doing some of the other ministry I was already involved in. Because whilst I see on one hand the importance of good HR for an organisation and how it benefits the experience of people before they join the organisation and while they work with the organisation, I also see that God's given me a range of passions and skills. So I love HR, but I also love getting out there, meeting new people, speaking Spanish. So yeah, I really enjoy having a role where I can combine those two things. So just something to be aware of if you're thinking of going abroad to work in missions, that depending on your role and depending on the organisation you're working with, there might be a way to combine your professional role along with other types of ministry. So just something to keep in mind.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's some good parting thoughts there from Jenna. As we now have to wrap up, sadly, this is as the end of tonight. And so apologies if we were unable to get to your question.
But yeah, just before we close, it would be really great to pray. So if you just want to join us for a moment, we'll close in prayer. Jesus, I thank you so much for the inspiration of hearing from Ali and from Jenna and from Alicia this evening. We pray that you would draw close to them, that you would encourage them as they seek to use their training to serve you and to make your name known to people who do not know who you are and do not know your love. And we also take a moment as well, Father, just to offer ourselves as well, to offer our skills, our training, our backgrounds, our experience, our professions, and whatever it is that we do on a day-to-day basis. And we just offer that over to you, Father, and we pray that you would prompt us, that you would challenge us, that you would show us ways that we can step out and use what you have given us to make your love known. And we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. So that is all for tonight, I'm afraid. We hope to be back next month. So do look out on our social channels for information about that. This, of course, will still continue to be live and available on YouTube and Facebook. So if you know somebody that this conversation is relevant for, feel free to tag them in the comments, pass it on, and let them know about these kind of opportunities and conversations that could help them in the next steps of their journey. So that's all for tonight. Thank you and goodbye.
Thanks very much. Bye.